Hello everyone and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan and thank you for coming to the channel. Let's start with a question. Is there such a thing as achieving critical mass in an aquarium? When you're talking about livestock, yes, there most certainly is. And when you're talking about live bearers, you can just multiply the affirmative exponentially. So yes times yes times yes. And this tank clearly has reached critical mass in terms of the livestock. You see a preponderance, and beg your pardon for the big words. I used to make a living as a writer, and I can be verbose, so apologies for that. But I'm inspired by my fish, and the big words come with inspiration. Anyway, live bearers make babies, and platies, swordtails, guppies, and mollies. I make a ton of them, and I've got several of those species in this aquarium, as you can plainly see. And there are all the different generations, which is one of the cool things about keeping live bearers. You got the big old mambo adults, like that black molly right there, that with the leer tail, gorgeous fish. I think that's a first bought aquarium fish, and then you've got the F1s, the F2s, the F3s. I know that's the pair that I got at a swap about a year and a half ago, those two adults, and they've dropped some fry, which are hard to tell apart from the red tuxedo platies in the beginning, because they both feature the red and black markings. And I've been told those species interbreed as well to further make it, all but impossible until you've got your adults, and even then you might have hybridization. And then of course the black mollies with the red mollies, and if I had yellow or the white and black, on and on it goes. But critical mass is when you've reached the point where there's just, it can't takes no more, right? And while this tank has really good, not perfect, but really good water parameters, my eyes tell me I'm at critical mass. So what's a girl to do? Well, first of all, continue to pull out the fry. And I can see a baby black molly right there. I gotta pull, and there's one that's about a month old, beautiful leer tail. We all hate to do it, but we've got to cull. And if I can't bring some of these fish to my LFS, and I can, it's just a lot of effort, just to be a nice guy, because they might give me one fish, of something in return, which makes it great. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes sometimes I just catch 20 babies, euthanize them in the refrigerator or freezer rather, which I have been told is the way to eliminate a sick fish, or doing what I'm doing. So rather than throw the live babies into my display tank, where some of them can grow up despite rainbow fish and cichlids, and that has happened, and I have videos showing that, I kill them and then thaw out the little ice cube that has about 20 babies into it and feed that to my display tank. So, that's one way to cull the herd here. And the other way is, hopefully, since live bearers don't live so long, I see them, if I'm finding dead fish ever, it's generally in this tank or in the display tank, where it's a vast community, clearly overstocked by most criteria, and there I will find a dead fish or invertebrate once in a while. Again, though, the water parameters are good to great, not perfect, but good to great. And I mean, you can see from looking at this tank, 32 gallon long, there's no ill-looking fish, no fin rot, no signs of overpopulation related diseases. Fish are fat and happy, sparring. You saw those two white cloud mountain minnows doing their thing. So nobody's hiding, nobody's shimmying, nobody's freaking out in the corner. So my eyes tell me it's overpopulated, but it also says things are status quo. The other kind of critical mass, and frankly it's what I was gonna start with, is plants. A more trickier question because heavy plants and healthy heavy planted tanks are the key to having a ton of livestock, not the other way around. You want to have really mature, fat growing, healthy plants in order to help deal with a ton of fish, right? Plus, if you're like me, plants are just awesome. They look so beautiful. Water gardening is as cool as fish keeping, and it's an integral part of the hobby for a lot of you, and definitely for me, both inside and outside of this aquarium, as you can see. But one thing with critical mass, when you get crypts that are just so intensely spreading, these aren't quite there yet, in my opinion. I like the effect, but it is getting to be a bit of a chaotic jumble. Now granted, there's some Brazilian pennywort that's infiltrated, and I can just pull that out. And that's another plant that can grow an inch a day, if not more. You see a strand is just there, if you could follow it down. So that interrupted the aesthetic of the crypticorn. But this pseudo-exotic, the Blixa japonica, not an easy plant for a lot of people, is just gone bonkers. It is like a carpeting hairgrass. Honestly, I've never been able to achieve anything like this with that plant before, and I've never seen it grow like this online at my LFS. Nobody has such a luxuriant, thick shag carpet of Blixa japonica like this. Is that critical mass? I can see a ton of blue dream shrimp in there. I mean, if I just hold the camera, I know I saw a ton. There they are. Okay, there's a few there. And so, you know, if I trim that out, and there's a bunch there, if you ask the shrimp, have I achieved critical mass with this plant, they will say, no, are you kidding me? Just like the fry will say, no, don't pull out all that Brazilian pennywort. That's where we like to hang out. Or this jumble here. I mean, we're safe in there, and that is true. That is true. But you do want swimming real estate space. For most fish really appreciate that. They also really appreciate a ton of plants and a ton of hydes and a ton of cover. All of that. So you have to figure it out for yourself, and each tank and each fish keeper is a little bit different. I like a lot of fish and I like a lot of plants, so more is good. You know, more plus more equals more. But with this plant, what's interesting, and I knew this would happen eventually, the plant can get so robust and full that it literally starts to pull itself out of the substrate. So it's sort of like a Christmas tree at this point, like a classic, you know, tree where you've got the, you know how you have to cut those branches down at the bottom? The guy at the Christmas tree farm will cut them off for you. Well, you can see one sticking out there, and if I just pluck that away, it's a whole new plant, and I can plant that elsewhere or trade it at my LFS. Now, they always take this plant, especially if I bring in a healthy groupings of them. But just pulling that one tendril isn't gonna do it. I'll probably need to just pull out this whole big group and then separate the plants, and there's probably a half dozen at least in this chunk representing all of that, and do a similar, you know, culling of this plant, if you will. And then what I know I'll take some of those strands and plant them elsewhere, because I really love the effect this plant has versus the more, I don't know, dwarf hairgrass is awesome and I love it, but it attracts algae. I mean, things happen to it. It's a little bit, maybe it's easier to grow, definitely easier for most people to grow, with or without CO2, preferably with. And by the way, I do run CO2 in this tank, but not a ton, and a lot of these plants would I think do pretty well without it, but I'm not taking that chance because look at the results I'm getting. It's crazy. People say your aquariums are more like gardens underwater, and I take it as a compliment. If I were to change this tank, somehow snap my fingers, it would be remove, like somehow try a whole different kind of fish than these, but essentially keep this evolving scape in place. What's a trending new topic now is not so much ripping and tearing down your scape to create new ones, especially if you're making YouTube videos. That, in my book, is a bummer when I see fish keepers, even the ones I admire, and they pull down a perfectly good scape just because they want to make another because of needing new fresh content. Maybe I'll evolve into that, who knows, but I question it right now. I would prefer to change out the fish. Now, the problem with that lovely idea is I could catch a bunch of these fast, and then there would be a bunch left that would be gun shy, and it would be a real hassle. And so what I do is, it's a version of nothing. I wait for nature to take its course. Sometimes a fish will jump, and sometimes they'll die from age, this, that, and the other, and I just wait for those cycles to help me out in terms of culling. But honestly, at critical mass, I'm gonna have to address some of these plants. The veil scenario, by the way, you absolutely have to deal with that. And this is a really cool tip, and I've never seen anyone do it. It works 8 out of 10 times. Just grab one that's really long and pull it, and you'll get the whole strand. It just comes right out. Look at this. Let me find it for you. Right down to the root. Why get in there with a knife and trim? You literally can thin it out this way, and I do that all the freaking time in this tank, in any tank that I have veil, and it's a lifesaver because instead of rooting around and going at the root stalks, which can create, like pulling out a pipeline or a cable under gravel and releasing all that sediment and potentially hazardous stuff into your water column and just making a mess in general. That method in the short and medium term really helps to keep the veil thin, and it obviously responds vigorously. There's no problem there. With the water sprite, that beautiful lime green that I've created, that it looks like a bonsai tree, right? I've just kept sort of encouraging it to stay in that corner, and the way I keep it a nice, healthy, toxic green, and I say toxic in the the way we describe it in the saltwater hobby, like a lime green, is I would just pull pieces from the end or any browning parts, and they come right off, and then I can keep that beautiful shape and texture back there. And so those are different ways to handle critical mass when it comes to your plants and fish. Slow growing epiphytes like this Anubias, it's rarely a problem. And when it is, it's a high class problem. Leaves in the pool, as someone I once knew said. So a high class problem, a problem you want to have when you have too much Anubias. And then you would just snip the rhizome and take that plant, its leaves, and that piece of rhizome that you cut, and put it somewhere else. And that's about, we're not there yet with this group of Anubias that I'm filming right now, but I have had to do it in the past in other aquariums. Pogostemon octopus, the bunch back here, that is always at critical mass once you've got your bunch like that. I cut 2 inches from the top of the water, 3 inches. It's back in no time. And then I'll reach in there, take a chance, and just pull out some plants to try to keep that one in its place and not overtaking the aquarium. And then of course you see the Brazilian pennywort and some frogbit and sylvinia, and you know how to deal with that. Just pull it out when necessary. Oddly, I'm not getting a overdose of frogbit anymore in this tank, which could be from the fairly significant flow up top, but I don't know. I used to have it in this tank. Maybe when I added a Brazilian pennywort, it outcompeted, and that's this plant for those just keeping score. And it grows super fast, and it has the same kind of floating modus operandi. It's different, and it is on a stem and a stalk and blah 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 blah, but most of the time you see it strewn about or growing wonderfully haphazard in an aquarium like you see in mine. So critical mass, folks. You know, my eyes tell me I've reached it in this aquarium right here, right now, in both livestock and plants. And I've told you the things that I'm going to do about it, but it's certainly not a drastic reboot. And why would I? I think this is one of my most beautiful aquariums for all of its chaos, organized chaos. One of my favorite buzzwords describing how I like to keep fish and plants in my fish room. Organized chaos, critical mass. All right, everybody, I'd like to say ciao for now, and as always, keep your hands in the tank.